Did you miss us? We're back. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Anthony Strait.
Welcome to On the Sports Lines, the MLB Spring Training Preview. Play ball! Oh, but there's still snow on the ground in over 1/3 of the country, but gosh darn it, our sports calendar will not
by us.
Not much snow. There's like some slushy, dirty snow, but it still counts.
Major meltage was happening today. I will give you that.
2/3 of the country Saturday still had snow. 1/3 of the country now. It's time for everyone to report to various locations that you only hear of in February and March in Florida and Arizona. Mets, Yankees, NL, AL, and rules not involving the DH. We want this to be a 1.5-hour show, not a 24-hour telethon, are to come. But first, the opener. I want the statue on one team. I want to be able to stay on one team and build my legacy over here in San Diego. Well, if anything, the Padres' 22-year-old Fernando Tatis Jr. is humble. In extension, 14 years, $340 million, the longest contract in the history of MLB by length, and the third largest in the history of MLB by money. He was born in 1999. Yes, 1999. I'm depressed. When I was almost a teenager, Anthony was almost a teenager, and Jay was something else. Jeez!
I was technically a grown-up already, so yes.
You've been a grown-up for a long time. Jay, not even a full... Yeah, true, debatable. Jay, not even a full season of games under his belt. Is this a good move? Is this a bad move? Or a move that should send the Padres to the psycho ward?
Look, I understand why the Padres did this. They believe they have the next Mike Trout, the next Mookie Betts, not to mention the next face of their franchise. And Tatis may very well be those things. He checks all the 5 tool boxes, and based on what we saw in the playoffs, the potential is there. But here's where I get stuck at, guys. He's not even 23 yet. Won't turn 23 until after this season, and he's only played the sum total of 143 games. Granted, the numbers he's put up in what amounts to almost one full season, those are pretty good. His slash line is 301, 374, 582, 39 homers, 98 RBI, 27 steals, 111 runs scored, along with top 5 finishes for National League Rookie of the Year and National League MVP, as well as the Silver Slugger Award. And I can understand the Padres not wanting him to ever hit free agency, but to give that length of a contract extension, Rabbi, you called it 14 years, $340 million. It ties the Padres to Tatis through his age 35 season. And remember, he has a no-trade clause. I mean, so you're doing this based more on potential than performance at this point, and I'm not sure it's a risk I would take. If he was, say, coming off his age 24 season with, 3 more full seasons under his belt and that same slash line and counting numbers, I'd feel more comfortable. Look, I know that players are playing longer and can stay close to their prime as they get later into their careers. But Robinson Cano should be a cautionary tale for every general manager. Tatis's contract is the largest for a player who has not yet reached salary arbitration. And as Rabbi said, 3rd largest in league history. Behind those only belonging to Trout and Betts, who have long been the popular picks as the best and second best player in the sport. Tatis may end up in that rarefied air, but for me, it's way too soon to tell. Look, Padres GM A.J. Preller has been high on Tatis since he first saw his current shortstop playing in the Dominican Republic as an amateur back when Preller was with the Texas Rangers front office. And the bond between him and Tatis has deepened, starting with when, the Padres acquired Tatis for James Shield before Tatis even played a minor league game. Preller's moves this offseason, such as acquiring Blake Snell and Yu Darvish, to kind of bolster that contender roster around Tatis, made it easy for the kid to accept the long-term extension. He feels comfortable in San Diego, and as the no-trade clause would indicate, he doesn't want to play anywhere else as of now. So it's a no-brainer for him to take the security that this extension gives him. But it might have been better for Preller to wait until after bare minimum this season. I mean, the Padres already have $300 million invested in Manny Machado, who has a decidedly longer and more productive resume than Tatis. Not to mention $144 million invested in Eric Hosmer, and in a small market where the team hasn't drawn $3 million since Petco Park opened in '04, and their local TV contract isn't even remotely close to what you'd call lucrative, you have to wonder if this boat that Preller is building can hold water long term. Look, he had to do a teardown after the last attempted build-up between 2015 and 2016. And the core of this team around Tatis, Machado, Hosmer, Darvish, Snell, among others, are either under contract or can opt out over the next 2 to 4 years. Look, Tatis could very well give the Padres the advantage at shortstop for years to come. His bat does both power and average. His glove does both highlight and routine plays, and he's a threat on the base pass. Some veteran baseball watchers consider him the best athlete they have ever seen. One exec referred to him as the LeBron James of shortstops. But with his entire career ahead of him, it's easy to make those pronouncements. But potential is a double-edged sword, as we three all know. Will the juice end up being worth the squeeze for the Padres? Preller's optimism is boundless. Mine, it's a lot more cautious.
For me, you know what? I love the deal because you got to think about it. He is 22 years old. It's a 14-year deal. You keep him under contract for a long time. You don't have to worry about him leaving because he's not going to be a free agent anytime in, I guess, our lifetimes at this point. But also, you got to think about this. The Padres are a team that hasn't really had a franchise player or a face of the franchise since Tony Gwynn, and that's going back almost a decade and a half to say the least. Then you're talking about the potential that Tatis. We saw it last season, the shortened season. We saw it towards the end of 2019. I mean, obviously, it's like the tools is there. He's a great hitter, great fielder, very athletic. So and plus because you're 22 years old, I mean, it doesn't hurt as well. But you got to think about this too. We're going into the 2021 baseball season under the cloud of labor, unease between the Players Association and Major League Baseball. So it's actually better now that the Padres are able to lock this up long term before anything else. We're talking about maybe baseball being interrupted after the season, maybe a lockout or a strike that could possibly kind of throw things up financially. And also the Padres got to think of it like this too. I mean, they got a team that's built to win right now, but the biggest foundation piece is going to be around and part of that team for a very, very long time. Hell, why not, instead of building a statue outside Pepper Park, how about just putting his name on a warehouse in left field? I mean, that is at least part of the stadium. I mean, you can't move that under any circumstances. But look, I like the deal. Lock up your best prospect, your best young player talent now. Don't even have to go into salary arbitration with him because you know what he's getting. And for all we know, he may be an MVP in the next couple of years. I mean, but the Padres are the offseason moves at the Padres. Obviously, I'll get into them later on in the show. What they did during the offseason, and with locking up Tatis is they had one eye on the present and another eye on the future. So I have no problem with them giving him this contract.
Two things that I want to mention real quick. Number one, in light of the Mariners executive this week basically saying up front before he got fired that he wanted to take years out of two prospects' careers, including their top prospect, Jared Kelenic, I applaud a team for basically thinking about a young man's future, although it seems like his agent has taken like almost a third of the money, but still $200 million. What can you do? That's number one. Number two, there's probably a little area in Petco already donated to Bartolo Colon's home run that he hit way back when. It's like a little monument in Monument Park out there. Should always be out there in every way, shape, or form. Number three, whoever thought we would say the phrase in our lifetime, because we know them pretty much as cheap pretty much for all of the 2000, that the Padres are spending money and want to build a contender. Anthony will talk about this at our NL preview, but I applaud this move. I think it's a risky move, but when you're a franchise that hasn't won the NL in 23 years and their World Series resume is pretty empty, I think it's time that you make a move like this. You're going to be competing, and for fans in California, you'll have the Giants who always build a contender, and you'll have the Dodgers for probably forever. And if the Angels ever decide to, wake up, you'll have them too. But if you're going to be a player, you got to make moves that are risky. I know, Jay, you were going to mention it, probably forgot to mention Manny Machado's huge-ass contract.
I mentioned the $300 million they have invested in him and $144 million invested in Hosmer. It's a lot of money to invest.
It is absolutely a lot of money.
Especially when we're coming off COVID, where you're concerned. I mean, how long is it? How many? It's going to be at least one more season before, you know,
you're not going to get the revenue. You may not even get the revenue for 2 more seasons. But again, you have to take risks to make money, and I think this is the first step for the Padres. Again, I don't think I would have ever expected this, but again, if you want to get to this, you got to make moves that are like this. And that's what they taught you in math class. Moving on to the New York.
Class, maybe.
Well, listen, you teach there's some different curriculums in some different schools, and there's others in other schools. We were in 2 different eras. All right. Moving on. The New York Yankees were disappointing to fans in 2020. The definition of disappointing to Yankee fans like you and me, Jay, is making it to the 5th game of the ALDS against the eventual AL champs and bowing out. We've been through this before. We're broken up. It's a very, very bad season. The Yankees have free agents back like DJ LeMahieu and Brett Gardner, but said bye-bye to a huge stalwart in the organization. That's Masahiro Tanaka. Let's answer some of Cam's burning questions right now because we're experts and that's what we do. Jay, the only certainty in the starting rotation after Garrett Cole is uncertainty, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about that rotation after number 1.
Okay, I mean, look, as you put it, Rabbi, I mean, Garrett Cole is the undisputed ace, and yes, the all caps is fitting of the Yankee starting rotation.
I would put an exclamation point after that as well, or I would put it in bold letters.
You know, 72-point type on the front page.
They literally had the gall to ask Aaron Boone, is Garrett Cole your number 1 starter? And it said yes, and because it's a slow news time, it was on the bottom of a ticker. Put it under the category of, no duh, do you watch baseball? Are you alive? Yeah,
and then the other thing is I'm guessing you're not a Yankees beat writer.
Yeah.
And look, and Cole did as much, if not more, than you could have expected from him, even in a short season. 7-3 in 12 starts, 2.84 ERA, a whip under 1 at 0.959, a 197 batting average against, 11 Ks per 9, finished 4th in the AL Cy Young voting. Won 2 of his Game 1 playoff series starts, beating Cleveland and Tampa Bay, what you pay him for, and did all he could in the ALDS finale, giving up just 1 run on a homer over 5 1/3 innings, only to have Aroldis Chapman allow a game winner in the bottom of the 8th on a night where the vaunted Yankee offense could only manage to cross the plate once on a home run by Aaron Judge. But here's the thing. If the Yankees could have gotten better pitching from the rotation in games 2 and 3, then maybe that series never gets to a game 5. The offense scored 9 runs over those 2 games, but Yankee pitching allowed 15. J.A. Happ was the innings logger for game 2 coming in after Davey Garcia opened the game. Combined, they allowed 5 runs over 3 2/3, with Happ allowing 4. In game 3, as Rabbi noted, Masahiro Tanaka, usually a very reliable postseason starter during his time in pinstripes, gave up 5 runs in 4 innings, including 2 homers. If either of those games gets pitched better, then this series is over after game 4, where Jordan Montgomery and the bullpen combined to allow 1 run. So with October in mind more than April, Yankees GM Brian Cashman spent the offseason looking to upgrade said rotation behind Cole. Gone were Tanaka, as Rabbi mentioned, who went back to Japan. Happ, who'd become a malcontent, so, don't let the door hit you on the way out. James Paxton, who was injury-prone and inconsistent when healthy. In their places, the Yankees brought in Corey Kluber, who was a 3-time All-Star and a 2-time AL Cy Young Award winner with a 98-58 career record and a 3.16 ERA in 10 seasons with Cleveland, and Jamison Talon, a former teammate of Cole's in Pittsburgh, who has a career record of 29-24 and a 3.67 ERA, which is impressive as it was done in Pittsburgh, which has been awful for the most part since Cole left. Both of these guys are coming off injuries. Kluber has not pitched a full season since 2018 when he went 20-7 with a 2.89 ERA, led the AL with 215 innings, and finished 3rd in the AL Cy Young voting. His 2019 was curtailed by a fractured forearm, and 2020 ended after a single inning due to a shoulder tear. Talen's coming off his second UCL surgery, which ended his 2019 season after 7 starts and 37 innings and kept him out for all of 2020 as well. Like Kluber, he had a very good 2018, going 14-10 with a 3.20 ERA for a Pirates team that actually managed to win 82 games. So health is a huge key for both of them. The Yankees are banking on that they'll return to their 2018 forms now that they've hopefully put the injury bug behind them. If they have, then the number 2 and number 3 spots in the rotation are locked in. That leaves the number 4 and 5 starts. I'm inclined to give Jordan Montgomery first dibs on one of those spots as he is finally fully healthy. And, based on his aforementioned start in Game 4 against the Rays. And the Yankees have been high on their homegrown starter for a while now. They've believed that the lefty has the stuff to be a rotation mainstay, and that the only thing stopping him from realizing that has been injuries. I believe that the other spot will ultimately belong to Luis Severino when he's 100% healthy again, which is projected to be around the mid-season mark. Until then, it's going to belong to whomever has the better spring training between Deivi Garcia, who's been the Yankees' most recent prized pitching prospect, and for a little while now, and got his feet wet in 2020, and Domingo Germán, who's returning to the team after finishing an 81-game suspension served over the last 2 seasons. Now, Germán would seem to have the leg up, right? Had a pretty solid 2019, going 18-4 with a 4.03 ERA. Did struggle with the long ball, 13 homers in 143 innings, but almost 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, almost 10 strikeouts per 9. His behavior during his suspension was erratic, saying he was quitting baseball multiple times before changing his mind. Couple that with several of his teammates knowing the full details behind the incident late into the 2019 season that resulted in his suspension, and Germán has a tough road ahead of him. It was very telling, guys, when Zach Britton, who's an MLB-PA rep for the Yankees, told the media, quote, "Sometimes you don't get to control who your teammates are," end quote, when asked about Germán, who to my knowledge has yet to talk to the team since arriving at camp, something manager Aaron Boone believes needs to happen, but he wants it to happen organically. Germán has not spoken to the media either. Garcia may actually have the leg up on Germán based on actually having pitched last season, as well as being actually liked in the locker room. Michael King and Clark Schmidt are also going to be given chances to take the open slot in the rotation. There is more uncertainty surrounding the starting rotation of a World Series contender than you would like to have coming into camp for this team, which has not lifted the trophy since '09. But considering the utter lack of faith we three on this show had in the Yankee starters after Cole last season, there's definitely more upside. And if past is prologue, the Yankees do have reason to be hopeful.
And Hap went to Minnesota, so we'll probably see him. We'll probably, as Yankee fans, see him again in the near future.
Yeah, we'll beat up on him like we do the rest of Minnesota's starters.
And Paxton went to Seattle, so they're
going home.
Yeah, well, so there you go. We're not seeing him again anytime soon. Anthony, I'm going to do my best John Sterling impersonation. Does the fall from grace for former, should have been Rookie of the Year, Bedell and Duhar continue in 2021?
Wow. And Duhar has been brought into the Yankees camp. And long story short, he's a position player, but not a position right now. I mean, they're going to try him out in the infield. They're going to try him out in the outfield. But, I mean, you think about this. At third base, Gio Urshela is pretty much a lock. There's no way the Yankees are taking him out of that lineup. They look in the outfield. You got already Hicks. You got Judge. And by the way, the Yankees brought back Brett Gardner, so that's another guy that's kind of maybe like alternating in the outfield. Now. So it's a crowded outfield, and you're not moving him away from. You're not taking Urshela away from third base. So maybe they're trying to fit him at first base. Who knows? The Yankees tried to do that last year. That didn't quite play out so well. Look, Andrew had a great rookie season 2 years ago. He hit for 27 home runs, 76 extra base hits, and finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. So there's a reason why the Yankees don't want to give up on him just yet. The last couple of years, he's had injuries. He's been inconsistent to go with that. He's had to play behind different, just seemed like he just fallen on with we talk about football, the depth chart. It's like he just plummeted out of rotation for that matter. And now you see that the Yankees want him to get back to that. As far as hitting, we know he has a talent, but fielding, as well and do hard weakness lines. I mean, he's shaky. When we talked about the 15 errors at third base, and clearly, when you have a shell playing like Greg Nettles, there's no way in the world you're going to place him at that position unless injuries kick in. Look, the short 2020 season, he started with 16 games, but alternated back and forth with the alternate site, right. Which became commonplace instead of minor league baseball in 2020. Well, he's got a long way to go. I mean, if he's healthy, he could probably another bat off the Yankee lineup. That's if he can even make the 25-man roster, and not have to go through the minors for that matter. Like I said, it's an uphill climb for him. When you see a young player with that talent, you want to see them try to get themselves going again, especially after injuries like a sore shoulder labrum that he went through in 2019. And last year, just not being able to really get the at-bats that he was able to get his rookie year, he had over 500. It's a little different when it drops off to not even near 100 in 60-semi games. So the Yankees don't want to give up on him, but it's hard to figure out where will he play this season. I mean, maybe he'd be the Joe McEwen and just be a utility guy and play wherever they place him, but he's not a great fielder, so it kind of leaves the Yankees right now in a kind of a quagmire. It's just what exactly he doing?
I mean, you talk about the depth chart, and I mean, he's number 2 at third base, probably number 3 at first base because DJ can always slide over. He may even drop to number 3 at third because DJ can slide over there. Tyler Wade is a better glove man, and he can play all around the horn as well. Tauchman's ahead of him in the outfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I'm be ahead of him, and Stanton's ahead of him as DH. I mean, the guy has essentially places to play, but nowhere is he like the first option you want to go to potentially off the bench even.
And Anthony basically said it perfectly. If you're doing that, you're probably going to start in the minors, and you don't waste a spot on a 25-man roster for a guy you're basically using in an emergency situation only.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I don't think he's going to get released in any way.
No way. He still has minor league options. And if he still has a minor league option,
they'll take it.
They'll keep him on the 40-man roster, but he's going to start the season.
He's going to start the season wherever they do it.
Yeah, because I look at the Yankees' projected lineup, and he's not even placed on the bench, 25-man roster. So I'm assuming more likely he'll start in the minors and they'll go from there. But either he's in a minor league system and maybe play his way back into the majors because of an injury, or maybe they move him later on down the line. I mean,
I think they
just don't have he's a great talent. They just don't have anywhere to place him right now.
I think the other question about that is if you move him now is the time, because you still have a little bit of value in him, but we'll see what happens. You're going to have to see, because if you get an injury to the starting rotation and you want to get a cheap 4 or 5 starter out there, he might be a piece to look at. Maybe. Let's take a look at the other problem on the team, and that's Gary Sanchez. When I look at the catcher position on a team, I see a guy who should be a defensive star, can effectively call a game behind the plate, and once in a while be an elite hitter for his team in terms of home runs and average. Gary Sanchez has been none of those things over the last few years, and it puts him on the hottest of seats that we have never seen before on any player on this team, even Andujar. When you knock in 10 home runs and drive in 24 runs in a third of the season, okay, it's your normal Jay Bruce line pretty much, 30 home or JD Dunn line, or Adam Dunn line, so to speak, 30 home runs, 72 RBI pace. Here's the line, though, on him last year. 147, 253, 365. That's not even numbers for anyone who's even near a replacement player. And if you want to try to go away from the all-or-nothing offense that the Yankees, outside of DJ LeMahieu, were at times in 2020, especially in that vaunted Game 5, Sanchez said that he knows to be better, and he knows he has to be better, but said up front this week, I don't want to play 2 times a day. But Kyle Higashioka will have that same chance to start as Sanchez will. Something you can't believe you would have said a year ago or 2 years ago. With him, you have a 250, 255, 21 line from last year, plus he is a massive 72-point, bold, italic, underlined upgrade defensively behind the plate. Sanchez's hit-or-miss offense is not an excuse for poor play behind the plate, and we know if Higashioka does enough with the bat and the glove he will already be Cole's personal catcher this year again. He's probably going to get the starting job for good, and they can look for a cheaper option in free agency. For the sake of Sanchez and the Bronx Bombers, if Sanchez does not earn himself the starting job and kind of play the way he did the last 2 years, I was talking a little bit about Andujar's value. Sanchez is going to have to get that same value in the open market where he's not even going to be a Yankee at all.
No, and I'll tell you this, Rabbi, if he doesn't do enough to at least make Aaron Boone have to bare minimum split the catching duties 50-50.
I don't even think he wants to split the catching duties 50-50. I think it's either 4 days or nothing.
Right, but it doesn't matter what he wants. If he doesn't do enough to even mitigate, make the case for splitting it, the Yankees have to move him. I'm not talking about whatever he wants, but if he doesn't do enough.
It's not even what he wants, though. I think it's because of the fact that Gary Sanchez can't really be a DH. There's no benefit to having Gary Sanchez on your roster as a split catcher because of all the things he doesn't do as a catcher. If you want to have a backup catcher, you want your backup catcher to be someone who knows how to call a game. Sanchez does not know how to call a game. Sanchez does not know how to do – he's not great with it. He's not great with that.
No, but
he doesn't have the fundamentals of what a backup catcher should be.
No, I mean, ideally you want this guy starting, but I tell you this, if that's what I'm saying is that even if the bare minimum, if Boone doesn't look at him at the end of training camp go, I can at least run him out there every other day, then you got to move him. It's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, that's the floor. That's the floor. If he can't even meet that floor, you got to move him. Forget about the feeling of doing enough to play every day.
Hey, look, when I got Gary Sanchez, I was actually watching the Yankees playoff games from 2019, a couple of seasons ago, and some of the games from last season, earlier today. And I think with Gary Sanchez, it's a confidence issue because when he's on, you see the guy, he get hit really well, and he can call a decent game, enough where the Yankees pitchers can at least go out there and put the team in a position to win. But then you see when his confidence is down, you see him behind the plate, not being able to block pitches in the dirt, which is the most fundamental thing you have to do as a back catcher, and allowing a lot of pass balls. That hurts the Yankees. It hurt them in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and it's something that he just never quite works on for whatever reason.
No,
and then you see when he goes into these slumps, these hitting slumps, it is dreadful. It is like literally Mark Teixeira in April under 200, dreadfully bad. I mean,
how dare you mention Mark Teixeira?
No. Yeah, well, watch the show in April. We know how.
I know that, but how dare you blaspheme, Mark Teixeira? You're done. You're done. You're done.
Rabbi, that's definitely a confidence issue with him, and it's something that I don't know. He has to figure it out, and maybe the Yankees manager, the coaching staff can help him with. But it's all Gary Sanchez right now. I don't know if the coaching staff or Aaron Boone could do but so much at this point because he was clearly a star player in the making, and he's going backwards. And like I said, it's all on the player at this point.
Yeah, and straight up, Gary Sanchez has become one of those guys where if he is not hitting, it very much carries over to the field. It affects him and his play at the catcher position. It is obvious, and it is glaringly obvious to any one of us anyone who follows the Yankees on a daily basis and has over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I want to see some semblance of the guy who was a prize prospect on this team. I feel like those prospects are falling fast for the Yankees. They need to.
You want the 2017 Sanchez, 2018.
You definitely, that's the one. Yeah. That's the ceiling. But right now, you're close to the floor. All right, so Anthony, what's the definition of disappointing to a New York Mets fan?
Let's see. Edwin Diaz in the ninth inning. I mean, pick one.
Well, the definition of the Mets in 2020 was actually being disappointing. They are looking to a spot where they haven't been for 4 straight seasons, and that is the playoffs. Changing ownership, hi Steve Cohen, and grabbing a possible franchise cornerstone. Hello, Francisco Lindor. Open up your pocket, Stevie. Take some of that GameStop money that you lost, and please give it over to Francisco. All right, let's answer some more questions about the New York Mets. He should, but who knows? This is the Mets, and everything that can go wrong will go wrong. It's Newton's Law.
His last name is not Wilpon. I got to believe he will open the wallet.
We'll see. Again, Newton's Law, and we'll talk about that in a second. Anthony, you mentioned Edwin Diaz, so perfect question for you. What's the state of this bullpen? We've been asking this for almost 3 years now.
You know what? It's so funny because when you look on paper, the Mets are like one of the top 5 teams going into the baseball season, but they kind of skipped on spending when it came to the bullpen. And unfortunately, they lost a very big member of the bullpen, and Seth Lugo, who is going to be out at least to the start of the season, having elbow surgery. And that is a big loss because Seth Lugo has become, in the last few years, one of the more dependable arms out of the bullpen, whether it's Mickey Callaway or even, like I said, he's one of those guys. But then you look at the Mets bullpen as it consists of right now. They got Diaz, the aforementioned Diaz. Trevor May, one of the key offseason acquisitions. Then you go down the list. It's very familiar. Dylan Betances, a guy they signed last season. Castro, Luke, Jacob Barnes, Robert Gazelman, a familiar face. You got Stephen Toffrey, Drew Smith, Daniel Zamora, Jerry Blevins. And here's the thing. You don't know if the Mets are going to carry 7 or 8 relief pitchers. And because of Lugo's injury, they may have to go with the full 8. And now they're in a position where they need to add some bullpen depth. And unfortunately, some of the better pitchers in the market is signed up. It's always signed up to other teams. Trevor Rosendahl was a guy they were looking at a few weeks ago. He has signed a 1-year deal with Oakland. Alva Perez, I mean, that's a name that Met fans want to forget after, 2007, 2008. He re-signed with the Cleveland Indians. So I went online earlier today to see who's out there. I mean, you got Roberto Osuna, who's still available. Shane Green, another arm. Brad Peacock. Let's see, Jeremy Jeffress. Jose Alvarez is another guy whose name has popped up in Met circles as far as who can they add to his bullpen. Jesse Chavez, you look down. Ryan Tepera. I mean,
are you just making up names now, Anthony? I feel like you are.
Yeah, David Robinson's another guy. I mean, you're familiar with that
yes,
name.
I am.
But,
we are.
But here's the thing. You also have to look at the option that whoever loses out of that number 5 back-end rotation starter, maybe David Peterson, who is just, who's a great number 2 guy because of all the injuries and the opt-outs. Remember that to the start rotation. Maybe he gets moved down to the bullpen to start the season until Seth Lugo returns. But I tell you what, the Mets bullpen has been a question mark to this team the last 3 seasons. It's cost the Mets some very valuable games. You saw it in 2019. The bullpen is single-handedly cost the Mets a playoff spot because they led the league and they were second in blown saves only to the team that actually figured it out and won the World Series, the Washington Nationals. Last year, the Mets couldn't even get to the bullpen because the starting rotation was so thin. This year, they got an abundance of starting pitching, but the bullpen, because of Lugo's injury, now the bullpen becomes a question mark again, and you wonder if the Mets can add some depth or maybe call somebody up from the minors to have an extra arm if they decide to go with the 8 relievers that most and add another position player that may not even get any playing time on the field. Now when you see the projected lineup and the Mets going into the season, there's no way.
Yeah. They're going to carry 13 pitchers, Anthony. They have to, especially with no universal DH.
Yeah. One of the on a tangent before we move on, one of the weirdest storylines since Trevor Bauer moved to LA is the fact that he's now getting it on Twitter with all of the Mets pitchers. Who would have known that the new number 1 enemy of Trevor Bauer is not Houston Astros fans, but Mets fans? What the hell is happening all of a sudden
Mets
here?
fans are unhappy that he spurned.
Yeah, but he's gaslighting them, which I don't understand.
Yes, the hilarious thing is that the beef actually started with him, I guess, giving Noah Syndergaard a pep talk on how to talk to fans who troll him. And Noah Syndergaard
nobody knows why Bauer does anything.
I know, but it was just...
I think Trevor Bauer should have taken a lesson from Bryce Harper not to try Noah Syndergaard on social media because it was just hysterical. And I'm looking at the Mets account. I'm like, okay, when do these 2 teams play? Because it's going to be interesting to see how Trevor Bauer received at Citi Field for the first time. More importantly, how the Mets players received him when the two teams eventually play each other.
I'll tell you what, guys, there's a reason that Trevor Bauer made the list of best and worst off-season signings on a survey, in a Major League Baseball survey conducted by The Athletic. Keep that in mind.
It's very weird. Jay, you're an everyman player, right? We consider you our utility player over here.
Sure. So I go where you guys need me.
Well, let's talk about a guy who does the same thing, Jeff McNeil. Where is his role in Flushing this season? And he's good enough, so there will be a role.
Yeah, look, the Mets have played McNeil all over the place in order to keep his bat in the lineup. In 3 seasons, he's played 129 games in the outfield, 86 in left, 43 in right, 99 at second base, 36 at third. Oh, yeah, 2 games at DH, 18 as a pinch hitter. But when that bat produces a 318, 384, 531 slash line in an all-star 2019 season with 23 homers, 75 RBI, 38 doubles, and 83 runs scored in 133 games, you can understand why the Mets don't care what glove McNeil wore on any given day. With Robinson Cano suspended for the entire 21 season, McNeil will most likely return to the best position for him, the one that the Mets once said was his only position, second base. Now, while being on the infield dirt and dealing with runners trying to take you out on double plays is tougher when compared to patrolling a corner outfield spot, but I have to believe that consistently playing one position, his natural position, will be good for McNeil both on the field and at the plate. That said, McNeil himself still believes he will get moved around the diamond based on who is playing or what the Mets need for any given game. And here's his quote. Going into spring training, kind of assuming I'll play everywhere, I imagine I'll play a lot of second base, but at the same time, get reps at third, left, right, wherever the team needs me, end quote. And while McNeil's not a gold glover at any of the positions he's played, he does have a positive defensive run save mark at all of them. So while he still may get moved around, I expect him to spend plenty of time at the Keystone Sack getting comfortable forming a double play combination with Lindor. Look, with no universal DH this season, I have to believe the Mets will most likely put the offensive lineup that, their best offensive lineup out there, which has Alonso at first, J.D. Davis at third, and Dom Smith in left field. They can live with Davis and his defensive shortcomings at the hot corner with newly acquired Francisco Lindor and his Gold Glove range at shortstop. And with Brandon Nimmo patrolling center field, they can somewhat live with Smith and his DH/first base level range in left field, though getting a better defensive center fielder, Jackie Bradley Jr., anybody, would make that even easier to put up with. That being said, second-year Mets manager Luis Rojas has made team defense a priority in camp, so McNeil will likely remain second on the depth chart at third and third on the depth chart at left field and right field, as well as being number 1 at second base, allowing Rojas to keep his bat in the lineup while potentially getting a better defender such as Jonathan Villar, who can play both second, short, and the outfield if needs be, into the game. Here's the thing. Having a consistent pair up the middle is key for a team's defense. So in my opinion, letting Lindor and McNeil build that rapport during spring training and then have it carry over into the regular season as the regular starters at shortstop and second base is what's best for the team long term. But if the only consistent spot McNeil has this season is atop the Mets batting order, yes, I am saying McNeil and not Brandon Nimmo should be batting in the leadoff spot in front of Lindor, which is where he spent the bulk of that 2019 season, putting up a slash line of 320, 386, 521, 16 homers, 57 RBI, 23 doubles, and 63 runs scored as a leadoff hitter. Then the Mets should be fine no matter where McNeil actually plays. Because at the end of the day, guys, his bat is ultimately what the Mets pay McNeil for, not his glove, no matter which one he wears.
McNeil is basically the definition, in my opinion, of what DJ LeMahieu is in terms of hitting to the New York Mets. He doesn't hit maybe for 330, 340, but he's like a plus 300 hitter, and he's the guy who can most consistently get you an RBI.
And the Mets definitely going to need a bounce-back season from McNeil without question. I mean, he struggled in the strike-shortened season. the shortened season last
I
year.
give everybody a pass on last year.
Yeah,
I don't give everybody a pass on last year. That's probably the best way to measure a team. I don't want to get into too much more of that, but
no, because
there's no lost season in 2020. We talked about it before. For giving the Dodgers a legitimate World Series victory, we have to give these teams legitimate passes, which brings me to me. Let's talk about Luis Rojas, who is really entering his first season, according to all of you, but it's year number 2.
First
so the switch
season.
It's still his second. Season. It's his second season. It's a real season. It's his second season to me. The switch from the Wilpon, and there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that during the show. The switch from the Wilpon era to the Cohen era seemed to be good for almost everybody, except 2 things. I hate to say this, Anthony. 1, people who like to sexually harass women, and 2, Luis Rojas.
Went there.
I did. When you have a manager hired by a previous regime, it's expected that 1, the manager will usually get fired, or 2, the manager finds a reason to make that team become his guy. So the manager of with the starting pitchers and starting rotation kind of being in flux in the shortened 2020 season, the management allowed people like Carlos Carrasco. You'll get a full, healthy Marcus Stroman. You'll get Thor back. So the pitching rotation for the New York Mets, they held them back in 2020, but they've given them all the assets in 2021 to make him better than his 26-34 record. The old adage would say 2 positive COVID tests, the disappearance of where in the world is Yoenis Cespedes, that rotation. All of that means he's still maybe on his rookie year. But let's be honest. We're a hot take world. Everybody's on the hot seat. New York is a baseball hotbed. So guess what? He's not. There is a lot of work for the Mets young manager to do. He's below 40, but he needs to prove that he can manage on a major league level. Of course, he'll get the year, but again, with new management, it's there. Luis Rojas is not the guy that Sandy Alderson hired.
No.
Just remember that. You don't have any obligation to keep him at the end of the year. And the expectation for the Mets is an 85 to 90 win team. If they're not that, and if they're less than 81 wins with the moves that they made, the management might not be hesitant to start anew again.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So the defending AL champions, as we mentioned earlier on this show, are the Tampa Bay Rays. We'll get to them and their moves in a moment, but there are other questions we must answer for the junior circuit in 2021. Jay, let's talk about the Blue Jays. We'll edit where they actually play in the beginning of the year later on this year. They're 3rd place in the AL East in 2020 and made it to the expanded playoffs, but they have a chance to get to first place in the division of 2021. Can they?
If the question is, are they ready to challenge the Yankees
and the Rays? That's why I changed the question.
You changed the question, but to me, the Yankees are the presumptive division winner, so I will limit it to that. The short answer is yes, they are.
Great. This is what's going to happen. Now you're basically calling them the presumptive division winner. We'll talk about that.
I'm not the only one who's calling them that.
You are, but just remember the fact that the Rays owned the Yankees last year.
They won't own them this year, not with the moves that they made. But
we'll talk about that in a second.
We'll get to that later. So the short answer is yes, they are. The Red Sox are going backwards. The Rays may not be far behind them in that direction based on the, again, moves that they made. And we all know that they barely play professional baseball in Baltimore these days. So even if they hadn't made the moves they made this offseason, I think they'd be the number 1 contender to the Yankees in the AL East by default. But they did make those moves, and it makes their number 1 contender status, to me at least, very legit. Look, granted, adding Robbie Ray and Steven Matz to your rotation behind ace Hyunjin Ryu won't strike fear into the rest of the AL, but the Blue Jays are far and away, on paper anyway, the most improved team in the AL. Adding George Springer to center field in the top of that lineup, Marcus Semien to play second base, even though it's only on a 1-year contract, to the existing, adding those guys to the existing core, anchored by some second-generation big leaguers, Kevin Biggio, who will likely move to third base to make room for Semien, Bo Bichette at short, and Vladimir Guerrero, who will spend most of the season at first base, DH, along with Luis Lourdes Gurriel, who many feel is primed for a breakout season, along with Kirby Yates, David Phillips, and Tyler Chatwood being added to the back end of the bullpen, gives Toronto a squad with enough talent and depth to at least make the Yankees take notice. As the rabbi knows, I pay no mind to win projections like the ones done by Fangraphs or Pacoda from Baseball Perspective.
That's the one I really bash. Pacoda is terrible and always thinks that the Atlanta Braves will have 82 wins.
But both of them, between those two, the win range is between 85 and 89 for the Blue Jays, which, depending on how the season shakes out, has them either just making the playoffs or just missing the playoffs, since remember, there's no expanded playoffs this year. Either scenario would be an improvement and possibly the first step towards becoming a consistent contender in the division. Look, there are still questions about this infield. Can they improve their defense? Can Biggio be an everyday third baseman? Can Vlad Guerrero Jr. be at least a decent glove at first base now that he's lost 42 pounds? The addition of Simeon at least gives them a defensively capable infielder who offers a veteran bat with playoff experience, whose last full season, 2019 in Oakland, resulted in a career-high slash line of 285, 369, 522, and career bests in homers with 33, RBI with 92, runs scored with 123, and doubles with 43, which led to a top 3 finish in the AL MVP voting. Look, Springer was the missing piece at 2 key positions, leadoff hitter and center field. This is a guy whose career 162 game averages are 270, 361, 491 as a slash line, with an average of 35 homers, 93 RBI, and 116 runs scored. And we all know what he's done in the postseason. Yates is coming off an injury play 2020, but was a Tier 1 closer with the Padres before that, putting up a 1.19 ERA with 41 saves. Toronto's gambling he can return to that level. If he does, then not paying top dollar to retain Liam Hendricks will be a non-story. Ray and Matz can be legitimate number 3 and 4 starters behind Ryu and Nate Peterson if the coaching staff can get them to where their talent and potential has people thinking they could ultimately be. The Jays still have questions and holes that need to be filled during the spring or in season, but their front office had the type of offseason you want out of a club that is all in on taking the next steps towards being the consistent division contender that I mentioned.
Yeah, let's see what happens with that team. I'm very interested to see what happens with the Blue Jays in 2021. But as I've said before with the NBA and the Raptors, it's going to be hard for that team. They're not going to start the year in Canada. They might have enough talent to overcome that, but you're going to see a little bit of a learning curve for there. So if they start slow,
remember, Rabbi,
they've done it before, but if they start slow.
Unlike the Raptors, who had to actually find a home, the Blue Jays actually have a default home built in because their spring training site is done in Florida, and they could very well
they can
play their home games there, especially since you don't have to worry about filling a 60,000 seat stadium.
No, but again,
you're going to be close to that being allowed in, so it doesn't matter if the seating is minor league level. No,
but also taken, the Raptors are pretty good now and have gotten back to 4. But so there's still an adjustment period for these Canadian teams that are forced to spend some extra time in the U.S. that they don't want to spend. Anthony,
well, remember, the Jays are already spending plenty of time getting acclimated to playing in the U.S. So if they have to stay where they are, I think they'll be fine.
That is true, but just remember, there's going to be – I still think it might be an issue, even if it's a game or 2 less. Anthony, the Rays, they lost some key players. So did the Indians. And as Yankee fans, me and Jay, are you broken up about that? No, right?
No.
All right, which fan base has it worse in 2021?
Well, look at this. The Rays are still kind of smarting from what happened in Game 6 of the World Series. And by the way, they lost Morton and Blake Snell, who, along with the Wendy's Twitter feed, decided to troll his former team on the way out, which is hysterical. But I think the Rays, because of the sum of all parts mentality, have enough to still be competitive in the American League East against the Yankees and the aforementioned Blue Jays. The Cleveland Indians, by the way, this will be the last season. We'll call them the Indians. They will have a name change in 2022. They were hit hard with COVID, probably more than just as bad as any other team. they went to the life preserver as much as anything as far as cutting up financial losses. You look at this is a team that just 5 years ago was removed from Game 7 of the World Series and being literally maybe one winning run away from ending their own curse, to say the least, before the Chicago Cubs were able to win it. But you look at it like this. I mean, they traded Lindor and Cavasso. They're the Mets right now. They declined options. Lost my place for a second. They declined Carlos Santana on the option on his contract. They still have Bieber. They still have Jose Ramirez, but that's not enough to really keep them as a playoff team, something they have been, at least a winning team for the last 8 seasons. I think they definitely taking a step back. They definitely shedded a lot of payroll. At least they're going to have $50 million. That's arguably the lowest in the American League. After having a $135 million payroll just 3 seasons ago. But the Indians, at this point, they're going through the rebuild. They're just kind of trying to pick up the sum of the parts and kind of patch things together to get through this season, probably the next, to try to get some of that lost revenue back. But right now, you look at this Indian lineup, and they have enough to be competitive, just not playoff caliber competitive. Looking at this team, they could be anywhere between 77 and 85 wins. It's clearly that's not going to be enough to make the playoffs. Terry Francona, Terry Francona is a guy I don't want to count out by no means, but he's had health issues as of late. They always talk about Sandy Alomar maybe being the heir apparent to being a manager if Francona has to step away for a foreseeable future to deal with his health. But right now, I see the Indians taking a step back. There's no expanded playoffs this year. I think they will miss the playoffs. I can't see them finishing no further than third.
That's the best they can do. They're not jumping
in the American League Central Division. It's going to be a season transition on and off the field because, like we said, this is the last season. We'll be calling them the Indians, and the movie Major League is going to be a relic and a collector's item at this point. And as far as my Rick Wild Thing Vaughn jersey, I'm gonna have to retire and hang up in the rafters. So, like I said, 2022 is going to be the season where the Cleveland team is going to be looking for a higher ceiling, but it's not going to be 2021.
No, I can't. I'll go one step further than you. The Royals and Tigers are making moves for their future. I wouldn't be surprised if they're 4th or 5th in that AL Central. By the way, I can't wait for the moment just to honor the knee of the Indians last year. I want Terry Francona to say sometime in the middle of the season, we won 2 in a row. If we won one more game, that's called the winning streak. It has happened before. So I'm hoping this happens in 2021. I hope for it, and that would be awesome.
You know what? It would be interesting to see what the Cleveland team will name themselves after the season. I mean, you could go Negro Leagues, go to the Cleveland Grays, maybe. Maybe you can go to their initial name was the Spiders, I think. Yeah, I'm arachnophobic. I would not like that name whatsoever.
The Cleveland Spiders, there's history there with that.
So, yeah, even though I'm arachnophobic, which is why I didn't attend the University of Richmond for a reason. Yeah. But it's been interesting to see what the name what they come up with.
By the way,
right now there's about 60 names out there that
they're not trademark, are they?
No, I hope not. I hope not. By the way,
names out there that fans have been voting on. We'll see what happens.
Oh, they'll all be trademarked. By the way, thank you, R-Truth, for your commentary on your fear of spiders. Okay, I want to put a disclaimer on this. My AL manager on the hot seat question. Not a hot take, knee-jerk reaction type of guy 24/7. I think people need to be given time at their jobs to be effective. However, a guy on the hot seat in the AL is a guy who hasn't managed in the big leagues for almost a decade and hasn't managed the White Sox in almost 3 decades, and that's Tony Larussa, now of the Chicago White Sox. Larussa already has his best player rating AL MVP, Jose Abreu, even though he has mild symptoms. He's out due to COVID-19. And despite the 100% of vote of confidence from star and amazing human being Tim Anderson, you got to believe the old school personality and philosophy of Larussa will eventually butt heads with the new school personality of everyone else. Let's sum this up in one quote from spring training. I know we don't want to take quotes in literal text here because we think they're all things to the press, but here's what journeyman Adam Eaton had to say on Larussa's first in-person speech to the team. His meeting was very blunt, to the point, didn't take much time, and we're really excited to get things going because you could hear the excitement. Eaton said, he doesn't seem like he's that excited, but you could definitely hear his excitement in his body language and his voice. He's ready to go. He doesn't seem like he's that excited. He must have said after that speech, you kids get off my lawn and start playing some baseball. Rick Renteria went 35-25 with this team last season. He was second place in the manager of the year behind Kevin Cash. The White Sox seem to be very much like a team who clicked much of the year. They were very close to winning the AL Central, dropped down to 7th, but they won one game off the Oakland A's, did not win that series. Larussa's players don't kill. If Larussa's players don't kill him first, and he's 77, so a heart attack might be in the making if he starts the season slow. And under 500,
or a DUI. Yes, I went there.
Yeah, that's almost as bad as my Mets sexual harassment joke. Almost. An under 500 record and regression will probably get him fired. Honorable mention in this category to Alex Cora, coming back to the Red Sox under a huge. Again, 72-point, big font, bulletproof letters. There's a huge cloud of uncertainty with him. He will be a welcome sight to a club that honestly missed him and didn't really play at all for Rick Renteria. I do think it's a bounce-back year for them, but more in this 75-80 win game plateau, which I know is not Red Sox material, but last year they were utterly horrible. But Cora's going to be a distraction to this team, and I'm wondering if the juice of hiring Alex Cora will actually be worth the squeeze come June, July. And they have a million questions, and Cora has a million questions asked to him day after day after day again. This is almost the equivalent of the Mets saying, well, Carlos Beltran didn't do anything wrong. Let's just keep him as manager.
Honestly, Rabbi, that's a fair comparison because as I talked about on the show in the fall, this past fall, the only reason the Red Sox dumped Cora was probably to avoid the public scrutiny and the scandal and to give the appearance of doing the right thing. The way they were talking about in there is that, you know what? Ron Renneke was going to be the interim manager for that year, and once the dust settled, they were going to bring Cora back, and they wouldn't care if people gave them crap about it because the front office didn't really want to get rid of him in the first place. They just figured they had to. So you know what? I don't know how much of a cloud he's actually going to be under, at least from that front office, Rabbi. He may have a question to answer, but I don't think his return is going to be under a cloud at all.
You know what? And I'll go back to the White Sox and Tony La Russa. If you're a White Sox fan, there is some hope that old school and new school can mix. Go back to the 2003 Florida Marlins and Jack McKeon, old school as it is, taking over a bunch of teenagers in Pro Player Stadium, and they eventually win the World Series with Josh Beckett. So there is some history there that Mr. Get Off My Yard can actually bend his ways a little bit and allow the young kids to play. And look, the White Sox have some talent. If Larussa can stay out of the way just a little bit, just enough, and let these guys play the way they play, let them have fun doing it, I think the White Sox can surprise a lot of people in this season.
Here's my one problem with your comparison, Anthony. Jack McKeon was never a control freak. Larussa is the epitome, Webster's Merriam Dictionary definition of the term, and I don't think he can back off even one iota and let these kids just play.
Not even a thermostat in a clubhouse?
Nope.
I mean, even that?
No. By the way,
he's way too set in his ways.
The better comparison is Jim Leland when he came back from his little hiatus and made the Dodgers a World Series team in 2006, who probably should have won that World Series from a much lesser St. Louis Cardinals team, which ironically was managed by Tony La Russa. So we've now circled back.
Come full circle.
Full circle.
All right, move on.
Almost.
The defending NL champions and World Series champs are the Los Angeles Dodgers. And they not only bring most of that same team back again, they brought in reigning Cy Young Award winner from the NL, Trevor Bauer, as well, who, again, is quickly making his name as the favorite son in Flushing, Queens. However, Anthony, there is the Padres, which we mentioned, Fernando Tatis Jr. statue in one corner of the outfield, Bartolo Colon Memorial outfield in the statue in the left. Let's talk about the Padres. Now, money spenders to the max. Again, who would have ever thought I would make that statement? Can they make a run at LA in 2021?
Well, they're going to have 19 games in the regular season to figure it out. So that's going to be fun to watch. You look at their offseason acquisitions. It's Yu Darvish. They got the aforementioned Blake Snell, who had a little fun kicking his former team on the way out of Tampa.
Yeah.
Joe Musgrove is another guy that was a great acquisition that's been overlooked. We just talked about Tatis being locked up. They got Manny Machado also. And you're talking about a team that made the playoffs last season and won the wild card series before getting swept by the Dodgers. And there was a little dust-up moment in the second game of that series. If you remember, Tatis hit a long drive that was caught, and when the Dodgers relievers celebrated, and kind of taunted Manny Machado, which kind of led to the benches clearing for a few minutes. I don't think the Padres have forgotten about that. I really do think that the Padres moves, and by the way, Chris Paddock, who started opening day, is probably the 4 or 5 in this rotation. Hard to believe.
Yep.
Which tells you that the Padres starting rotation is scarily good right now. And I think this really led to the Dodgers going after Trevor Bauer. I think the Dodgers saw what their counterparts were doing in their own division, their own backyard, and just looked at themselves like, you know what? We need to add another arm to a rotation that's already good. We saw what an offseason acquisition could do with Mookie Betts last season to the Dodgers. And we'll look at what the Padres could do if they can step it up. They play each other 19 times this season. They're going to have a lot of opportunities to beat each other apart. And I know the rest of the NL West teams like the Giants or the Rockies are kind of hoping they beat each other so much that they kind of wear each other down by October and someone can sneak up and catch one of the two teams. But you know what? This is going to be a fun interdivision rivalry to watch as the season progresses, and who knows, maybe we'll see the same matchup in October, which would be great for baseball. And by the way, who's covering the National League playoffs this year? Is it Fox FS1? Because is it them or TBS or Turner Sports? I think it's
Turner gets the NL. Turner gets the NL this year. Fox gets the NL.
Yeah, I'm quite sure. Let's see.
Tell you this.
I know. Look, Brian Anderson spent the ALCS in San Diego. He would love to be back in California, calling playoff games in San Diego and Dodger Stadium again. This time with some fans in attendance and actual National League teams playing their home ballpark.
Did you see that place in Arlington last year? I want to be in that stadium too. Both of those stadiums are budget amazing.
It is good and cavernous because
oh my Lord.
I still can't believe how home was flying out of the ballpark.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, guys. Here's the thing that concerns me about the Dodgers. As I said earlier, Trevor Bauer can conceivably split that locker room in half, depending on what day it is for him. And 2, the bigger question. Have the Dodgers solved the 9th inning? They had issues with it last year. Jansen is not as consistent as you would like the 9th inning guy to be on a World Series title team. Is Trennan going to take that job away from him? He has experience. It's going to be interesting. For me, the Dodgers, for them to solidify themselves and lock down another trip to the World Series, they have got to consistently lock down the 9th inning.
Well, 19, the Nationals were a horrible bullpen. 20, the Dodgers were kind of not at the rate what they were, and they still won the World Series. So as much as we said that the bullpens are closers, we had 2 pretty crappy bullpens win some big games and win 6 and 7 game series, mind you. So
it helps. It helps when you've got tier 1 starting rotation guys and a hell of an offense. It can offset that. But
is there anything higher than a tier 1 offense? Because the Dodgers are that. Yeah. All right. Jay, speaking of the Rockies, which you mentioned like 5 minutes ago, let's talk about Nolan Ronaldo, who is now a Cardinal. He's a lifetime 293 hitter and will probably get to 400 homers easily. So, of course, the Rockies dump him off to the Cardinals for nothing.
Nothing.
What does it mean for St. Louis?
The short, easy answer, Rabbi, is that everyone else in the NL Central is playing for second place. Adding Arenado basically gives the division to the Cardinals. This one trade, coupled with the rest of the teams in the division pretty much, being dead silent in the offseason, changed the look of the entire division. To borrow from the Athletics' Jason Stark, here's the quote. By basically taking a 3-month nap this winter, they were inviting the first team that did anything of consequence to push away from the rest of the pack. This is a guy who, since 2014, according to Baseball Reference, ranks number 1 among National League players in wins above replacement. That's WAR for you guys, at 36.6. The player who is second best in that span, just some guy who plays across the diamond from him, and that's the Cardinals' first baseman called Goldschmidt, who put up a WAR of 35. All players who manned the hot corner for the Cards in that span, including Matt Carpenter, put up a combined 18.3 WAR, meaning that Arenado has been twice as valuable as everyone St. Louis put at third base in that time span. That pretty much tells you all you need to know about this tier 1 two-way ability of the new guy in town. Granted, he's coming off on injury-filled 2020. He was playing through constant shoulder pain, which brought down his usual power numbers. But as I said earlier, I give 2020 a big honking asterisk. And granted that his career home road splits give off that Coors Field effect vibe, but this is a guy with 8 Gold Gloves, 4 Silver Slugger awards in his last 5 full seasons in Colorado. And he was a lace-em-up, play-every-day kind of guy, averaging 157 games a year. And maybe he won't average 40 homers, 124 RBIs, or 104 runs scored without that Coors Field effect. We all know Busch Stadium is a slightly larger, less offensive, favorable ballpark, but there's no reason he can't come close to his average slash line of 300, 362, 575 over those 5 years. And as we all know, guys, defense at the hot corner travels well, so the Cards can lock in his Gold Glove level work on the field. Look, teaming him with Goldschmidt gives the Cardinals a middle of the order, gives it some real power, and power was something they've been missing and has hurt them in the postseason of late. And, the pitching staff with guys like Adam Wainwright, who is back in Cardinal blue, and Jack Flaherty will definitely benefit from Arenado's ability to pick it at third base. Arenado's under contract through 2027, but he does have opt-out options after this season or next. But after doing everything in his power to get out of Colorado, just like the rabbi got out of the room, remember, he had to waive his no-trade clause to make it happen and go anywhere else, it seems. He seems to be happy to have landed with the franchise that has the most World Series wins of any National League team. Quote, I plan on sticking around. That's my goal. I plan on staying here for a long time. I said that once in Colorado, but I truly mean it. I expect to be here for a long time because that's the dream, right? As a kid, you dream of winning a World Series. It's still the dream now. To join this organization, they care about winning, and they want to get things done. It's really exciting. And, guys, if Arenado stays healthy and puts up something close to his usual numbers from his time in Colorado and continues his Golden Glove work, the division could belong to St. Louis for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you know what? I had the Cardinals winning that division, but I talked about. I remember last year, our last spring training show last year, pre-pandemic. I joked about Ronaldo wanting to get the heck out of Colorado. Like he couldn't get out of fast enough. He was one of the guys I thought was going to
Colorado seemed to not want him either. Yeah, it's kind of a two-way street here.
Yeah, those bridges got burned on both sides.
Yeah, it was to the force that had to happen. But I think being in St. Louis and being in a position where the Cardinals are a good team, they're going to compete. I think that's going to energize him a lot. He's in a new environment. He needed to change his scenery. The Rockies needed to move on as well. I think it's a move for best of both sides. I can see Ronaldo being putting up the same numbers in Colorado. I mean, he's one of those hitters who can hit anywhere. It's not just inflated numbers in Coors Field. I think he's going to really be a great addition to the St. Louis Cardinals team lineup.
And here's something, guys. As you said, Anthony, that divorce had to happen. We're talking irreconcilable differences. And I agree with you. If you're a baseball player who loves the game, coming to St. Louis, which to me is the epitome of a baseball town, with all that history, with all that success, 11 World Series titles, there was no better place for Arenado to land to kind of rediscover his joy of playing this game. So I look for a really good bounce-back season from him. And like I said, you might as well You can start printing up playoff tickets now, St. Louis.
Okay, so everybody bet against St. Louis when they are heavy favorites to win the Central this year.
It only happens when you say it, Rabbi.
Well, let me just.
Them.
I know. It's a simple pick, but I will say this. The Cubs seem like they're basically breaking down their organization, especially after the Darvish trade. But if they keep everybody intact, and that's a big if, because I feel like everybody has been shopping for Chris Bryant, watch out for them. I think David Ross kind of exceeded expectations in this first season, and there's not going to be as much pressure on Chicago this year. As for Pittsburgh, they're Pittsburgh. As for Cincinnati, they're Cincinnati. And as for Milwaukee, Kristen Yelich needs to get out of hibernation. All right. Now for my NL manager on the hot seat, and I'm going to go with a manager who's had a whopping 60 games for his new team, and that's Phillies manager Joe Girardi. We know the city of Philadelphia has been known for its patience, but after a lackluster 15 – yes, no, it really has. But after a lackluster 15-15 record heading into the final month of the season, I know COVID was a reason of that portion of that reasoning, no doubt. But again, we need to make money this year and have a winning product on the field, so it's not an asterisk. It happened. A 13-17 final month of the season for the Phillies put them close to the playoffs. Remember, in an expanded field, they didn't make it. They still needed one more win. Let's talk about Bryce Harper, the person who predicted a World Series for the Washington Nationals in 2019, as he said at a press conference accidentally, and it happened. Bryce Harper is in the middle of a massive contract. He's in just here 13, guys. JT Realmuto decided to re-up. He was one of the major prized free agents. Girardi's bullpen era in 2020, 7.04. It's a shortened season. We talk about how the Mets have a bad bullpen. The Phillies was twice as worse. It was a shortened season, and Joe Girardi has never, ever had a bullpen of under 4 in his time in New York at the end of his season. Not one time. With Archie,
it helps when you have Mariano Rivera. Come on.
It does, but still, under 4 to 7.04 is not what you want to see Mariano Rivera or no Mariano Rivera. With Archie Bradley, formerly of the Reds, being added to their bullpen, the Phillies need to improve in this one position. The Phillies spent the third most money in their offseason. Remember, they also re-signed Didi Gregorius. If they don't improve, Joe Girardi, who is actually the second longest tenured manager in Philadelphia right now.
That's hilarious.
That is true, by the late Mcneal. If he doesn't improve this season, your boy Doc Rivers is going to get into that number 2 spot of longest tenured managers or coaches in Philadelphia.
Well, to be fair, Rabbi, I think Doc Rivers has a better chance of making the postseason than Girardi does.
Well, the NBA, everybody makes the postseason. I mean, 20 out of 30 teams are making the postseason this year. So I think there's a good possibility of that happening.
I'll take it a step further. Doc Rivers has a better chance of winning his division than Girardi has of winning his.
He has a better chance of winning a title, that's for sure. They're making it to their championship.
No, you know what? I'll do you one further. Gritty has a chance of winning his division than Joe Girardi right now. And Gritty can't be stopped.
You're talking Philly, Rabbi. You should have known Anthony would work a Gritty reference in there somehow.
Why was I not surprised?
You should have seen it coming.
I did.
You know it. Hey, Gritty is all-knowing right now, okay? He's literally the best thing to watch on the Flyers, even though they kicked the Rangers earlier tonight.
I was going to say, the Flyers have been a very good team this year. He's not the best thing about the Flyers.
I'll tell you this, Rabbi. I'm gonna put a hot take out there right now. Let's see if Anthony makes it happen. I'm going to say this. If the Flyers make the playoffs this year, the first show where we're talking NHL playoffs, Anthony is going to show us a Gritty bobblehead or something along those lines.
I'll even show it. By the way, before we mention, I was going to mention, let's say our prayers, for Tiger Woods, who had a major car crash on Tuesday. Yeah. And we hope he gets better. I think we want, for the first thing for him, is to be able to walk again before even playing golf at this moment. So prayers up to him. I know we're not eulogizing him, but we're hoping for we're hoping for a recovery for him.
Yeah, and as the Athletic story on this situation put it, the bottom line, Sam and Charlie still have their father, and that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Jay.
All right, let's move on and let's get back to the comedy of our show because I have a comedy segment right now going on here.
Oh, yeah.
To quote the great and Grammy Award-winning artist, new artist of the year, I think in 2018, Dua Lipa, I got new rules. I got
Cover of Rolling Stone in February.
Oh, that is true. You are a music guy, Jay. So you definitely know who Dua Lipa is.
I work for Rolling Stone. I learn these things.
That is true. To make things speed up and excite the game,
Sure.
baseball released temporary rule additions in 2020. Some are back, like it or not, for 2021. Jay, the return of the 7-inning doubleheader. Jay, love this move, leave this move, or let's add the committing to psych ward move that we added in the beginning of the show for Fernando Tatis.
I'm not going to go far as to say committed to Bellevue on a 72-hour pass, but I am going to leave it. As I said to you guys in our production meeting, if this were way back in the day when doubleheaders were actually scheduled on purpose and Game 2 started 30 minutes after Game 1 and the fans stayed put, then having the players only having to play a minimum of 14 innings in a given day may have made a certain amount of sense. And if they go back to that, 2 games back-to-back, single admission for the fans, then I can see it making some sense as a permanent rule change. But we've long been in the era, guys, of day-night doubleheaders where Game 1 is played at 1 p.m., Game 2 is played at 7:30 p.m., where a pitcher can be brought up in the time in between the games to start the nightcap. And as long as that stays the norm with having 2 different gates, meaning separate sets of fans for each game, I don't see a need to continue to pervert yet another piece of America's pastime. Baseball's a 9-inning game, guys, 27 outs for each side. This is as basic as it gets. And I'm not the only one who feels that this is an affront to the sport. The Athletic ran a survey after last season asking fans about these new rules that were implemented for the COVID-shortened season. And this rule was a lot of people's least favorite change. 6,727 people responded to this question, and almost 62% of their responses were negative. To quote one fan, it turned the sport into a carnival act, while another encapsulated it this way, quote, 7-inning doubleheaders are not baseball. It's trash. I understand it for this season just to be able to get through the games, but it's not something I'd ever want to see become the norm, end quote. I could not agree more. This one cannot be done away with soon enough for me. I just hope when the new CBA is being negotiated that this one never makes it to the bargaining table.
And that's going to be the first. That's not going to be the only problem with the new CBA coming out, but we have a lot more to go on that. I might want to save that for our MLB preview show. Anthony, I was going to do the same love it, leave it tease for this next one, but if you have a pulse or if you don't work for MLB, you should know the answer to this. Anthony, the ghost runner, or in terms that make sense, having a runner at second to start all extra innings, please say no to this. Please.
You know what?
Say no.
Sean Wong would be proud of all of us because he is a baseball purist. Yeah. I hate this rule. I absolutely hate it. Like,
who does? Who likes this rule? Nobody. The devil does.
Think about this. If you have a relief pitcher coming in to pitch the inning and you already have to start out with a runner on second, I mean, normally we relief pitcher, you want to come in with a clean inning, no one's on base, you're not trying to bail out somebody who got into a jam, and you literally come into the 10th inning and there's a runner on second base who happened to be the guy who made the last
out the previous inning.
Half inning. It is the most absurd thing I have ever saw. Like, the weirdness of losing a game on an extra base hit on one pitch into the alley is bizarre. And look, I didn't mind it for the 60-game sprint to the finish line because you just wanted to get it out of it. You just wanted to get through the season in one piece, just like the 7-inning doubleheader. But just like the 7-inning doubleheaders, I hate this rule. Look, I want you want baseball teams to own their wins. I understand you don't want teams playing into the wee hours in the morning. But what's that the charm of Major League Baseball? The fact that there was no running the clock out to 0 to preserve a win. You had to get 27 hours one way or the other and win a lead to win a game. What happened to that? It just seemed like this is like Little League. Little League don't even do this. It just bogs my mind that these 2 rules are being used in a full 162-game season Well, it was okay to experiment with it. You saw the fans hate it. The players probably didn't like it one iota. And you still go – the Players Association agreed to this. Was probably the biggest surprise to me more than anything. Look, I hate this rule. I hope to after the season to never see this again. Ever. I don't want to see it in a video game. I don't want to see it in real life. I don't want to see it in Little League, which I hope comes back this summer. I don't want to see it in Williamsport, Cooperstown, nowhere. Get it away after this season. Put it. I want it to be Old Yeller and take it out into the pastures and put out this collective misery once and for all. I hate this rule.
Anthony. Let me get in here first. Anthony, as our resident The Show 2021 expert, I hope to God this wasn't in the video game last year.
No, it was not. No, none of these gimmick rules were in the game.
Okay, I hope they're not in this year either.
But the game was released before the pandemic and the shortening of the season. That's one thing.
I hope they're not this year either.
Rabbi,
our favorite topic, Fernando Tatis Jr. is the cover guy this year.
Oh,
so,
good move.
Let's hope there's no jinx with that. Rabbi, here's my thing. And I think the reason the Players Association kind of had no choice but to accept these two rules along with the expanded playoffs was because
they didn't accept the expanded playoffs. The playoffs
they had to.
I mean, last season, I think he meant
right.
Is what I'm talking about. I think they had no choice but to accept these because MLB and the owners made it conditional. Oh, you want to make sure you get the maximum amount of pay in this shortened season? Oh, you want a universal DH? Well, then you have to accept the following. And here is my concern, guys, is that Major League Baseball is going to take these contrivances, these Carnival Act rules, and try to use them to force the Players Association to accept things they do not want to accept when the CBA comes up. In order for the players are going to have to eat these, because I guarantee you this, universal DH is one of the big things that's on the CBA when it comes up, and the Players Association wants it because they want the extra job. The question is which one of these stupid rules is MLB going to say, oh, you want universal DH? You got to accept the following. I just hope it's not any of these. I would sooner accept expanded playoffs than either of these two ridiculous rules.
Speaking of that, let's talk about that for a very quick second. I love the expanded playoffs from 2020. I think it needs a little bit of work, but it saw the Yankees-Indians, that game, that very, very, very classic game 2, where it went almost into the night. It was one of the best games we've seen all year. It gives teams a chance. It's not like too many Cinderellas affected it. We still had the best team from the East at the end of the day against the best team for the West, so it didn't really – or the best team for the AL against the best team of the NL. So it didn't really hamper anything. That was a crazy few days, and I think for the sake of the TV partners, because we do have to look at them for a second and for the sake of everybody else.
Yeah.
I think we could drop it down a little bit, maybe have 12 teams in the playoffs, maybe just add one. But I think having an expanded playoffs was actually one of the fun things about the fall, and it got me a little excied for the baseball playoffs. It can be sometimes boring for some people.
And Rabbi, I was never a fan of the single game elimination, for that first round of the playoffs. So I appreciated, if you're going to expand, at least the first round is 2 out of 3. That to me, at least, that's more of a thing, because baseball playoffs is, you play a series. One game elimination, to me, save that for March Madness, is the one and done.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair to say that, but this was kind of baseball's semi-version of March Madness, and I think to a certain extent it worked. I think the only downfall was...
I will grant you, we know that the television partners loved it because it gave them more games.
It gave them more interest, especially ESPN, which needed it.
And it made the end of the season, especially this short of a season, a lot more interesting. And I'll tell you what, like I said, I would, if I have to accept an expanded playoff format to get universal DH into the game, I'm fine with that. The only thing is, like Anthony, I don't want to see either one of these two things ever again.
Yeah, I mean, I love, like I said, there was one thing I was hoping that did carry over was maybe like expanding the playoffs to 12 teams, like adding an extra
Yeah.
team, but also like the wild card going to a best of 3, which I felt they should have done for the longest.
Oh,
And
yeah,
because
without a doubt.
everybody, baseball's played in a series. You don't just play
Yeah.
one game and then you move on. But also, I felt like the way that the baseball schedule is done nowadays, especially how it's done last season, where teams kind of sat around like in years past, teams sat around 3-4 days before they played a playoff game. You have plenty of time to get a best 2 out of 3 with the highest seed.
Yeah.
Like the 2 wildcard teams hosting those 3 games.
Right, but
Like,
now you're playing every other day, which is the way it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was something that should have been carried over.
We'll also see what happens as we go along, and I'm going to end this show with this. I think one of the things that hurt the Yankees and a lot of other teams in the playoffs last year was having to play 5 games in 5 days because a team with
I wasn't a big fan of that.
Yeah, nobody was really a big fan of that, especially if you didn't have a rotation like the Yankees did, and that's one of the reasons why they lost. But
a bullpen for that matter too.
Well, that's true.
But I mean, if you're playing a best of 5 over 7 days with travel days,
still going to be a little bit different.
It does make it different because then I tell you
You
this:
can play somebody twice.
There you go.
You can pitch somebody twice, and Garrett Cole didn't have to go after 3 days. Again, I said that was the last thing, and I mean it because this show is over. Since it's still under 40 degrees outside, let's just stop all the baseball talking and go to bed. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Stephen Rabinowitz, and we're here on All This Sports Lines. We're going back to the court for the next few weeks, not the People's Court, like I posted on our Facebook page earlier today. Take a chance to watch that. That was really funny. But we're going to have our halfway NBA show next week, and then we'll talk March Madness over the next few weeks after that. Would you like to? He gets his fans together, and he knows that he gets 2 days. He's so excited because there's 2 days, weekdays that he gets to take off this year on Friday and Monday because of the new format of March Madness. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
Rabbi, look, I'm loving the fact that we get to do a bracketology show and a March Madness show. So I am going to be,
which will basically be, by the way, a year of doing these shows, which is really, really surprising. All right. Meanwhile, want to see the show live? Sure you do. We can do that for you at facebook.com/onthesportslines. Want to see this show on demand the next day or catch up on it's now almost a year's worth of quarantine episodes? youtube.com/onthesportslines for that. And if you want a man that's not me, because I've talked way too much tonight, and who's talked a little more than I have tonight, to talk about our Twitter page, Jay?
At ONTH Sportslines is our Twitter handle. The link to this show will be up there probably tomorrow.
Probably tomorrow. At least this is an evergreen show. You don't have to worry about this for a while.
Exactly.
Anyway, everybody, enjoy all the sports that are currently on, and let's go Yankees. Good night and let's go Mets too, Anthony.
There you go.
I got you there. Good night from On Sports.
Night, everybody.